What if I told you that the most unexpected food in Mississippi, the food that confuses visitors more than anything else, is the tamale? That a 350-mile trail exists in the Mississippi Delta dedicated to finding and eating hot tamales from roadside stands, blues clubs, and family restaurants? That the most famous bluesman of all time sang about a tamale vendor in 1936, and that the song is the historical record of how a Mexican food became a Mississippi tradition. That a Depression-era burger in Corinth, Mississippi was made partly from soybeans because the town couldn't afford enough beef, and that people are still eating it today. Mississippi. The food is the blues is the food. Both came from the same place and the same people, and neither one has left. On November 27, 1936, in a hotel room in San Antonio, Texas, Robert Johnson, the Mississippi Delta bluesman who according to legend sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads of Highway 49 and Highway 61, recorded a song called They're Red Hot. The lyrics went, "Hot tamales, and they're red hot. Yes, she got 'em for sale." The song is evidence. It is the historical record of a food tradition that food historians call one of the great culinary mysteries of the American South. Why does the Mississippi Delta have hot tamales? In his 1936 recording, bluesman Robert Johnson employed the imagery of a tamale vendor to describe a woman. Made of cornmeal and meat, the tamale was a staple in the diet of Mexican migrant laborers in the Delta and became a popular item of local cuisine. The history of the hot tamale in the Mississippi Delta reaches back to at least the early 20th century. How and when were hot tamales introduced to the most southern place on earth? There are as many answers to that question as there are tamale recipes. The most widely accepted theory. Local culinary historians agree it's most likely that they originated with Mexican migrant workers, who swapped recipes with Black Americans more than a century ago. African Americans who worked alongside Mexican migrants in the cotton fields recognized the basic ingredients, cornmeal and pork, and adapted the tamale to local tastes and local technique. The Delta hot tamale is different from the Mexican tamale. It is smaller, pocket-sized, built for a working man's lunch. It is simmered rather than steamed, served wet in its cooking liquid rather than dry in a corn husk. The spice blend is different. The texture is different. It is not a Mexican tamale that traveled north. It is a Mississippi tamale that evolved from the encounter between two cultures in the cotton fields of the Delta. Mississippi produces more farm-raised catfish than any other state in America. Over 60% of the national supply comes from the ponds of the Mississippi Delta, from the same flat alluvial plain that produces the tamales and the blues and the cotton. The channel catfish has been a food source in the Mississippi Delta since before European contact. The indigenous peoples of the region fished the river and its tributaries for catfish for thousands of years. After the Civil War, catfish became central to the food culture of the African American communities of the Delta. Fried catfish at Friday fish fries, catfish in stews, catfish as the centerpiece of the communal meal. The farm-raised catfish industry began in the Delta in the 1960s when farmers discovered that the flat, clay-bottomed land that floods seasonally could be converted into fish ponds. By the 1980s, the Delta catfish industry had become one of the most significant agricultural operations in the state. Humphreys County, Mississippi, became the catfish capital of the world. More catfish per acre than anywhere on Earth. A Mississippi fried catfish is not a fish fry in the way that a Milwaukee or Rochester fish fry is. It is catfish, specifically channel catfish, raised in Delta ponds, dredged in seasoned cornmeal and fried in hot oil until the cornmeal crust is dark and crackling and the fish inside is white and flaking. It is served with coleslaw, hush puppies, and hot sauce. It is served at Friday night fish fries that run from church fellowship halls to roadside restaurants to the kind of family gathering where the fish is fried outside in a cast iron pot over a propane burner and everyone eats standing up. In the early 1930s, during the worst years of the Great Depression, a burger stand in Corinth, Mississippi, was trying to feed people who had almost nothing. Beef was expensive. The solution was to stretch the beef with soybean meal, a cheap, available extender that added bulk and calories to the patty without requiring more meat. The resulting patty, beef mixed with soybean meal, formed into a thin cake and deep-fried in oil, was sold for a nickel. In Depression-era slang, a nickel was a slug. The burger became the slug burger. The slug burger is still sold in Corinth today. It is still made from the original combination of beef and grain extender, soy flour or potato flour in modern versions, still formed thin, still deep-fried rather than grilled, still served on a small bun with mustard, onion, and pickle. The Borum's Drug Store in Corinth, opened since 1865, has been serving slug burgers since the Depression and is the oldest continuously operating drugstore in Mississippi. The World Slug Burger Festival is held in Corinth every July. The festival features slug burger eating contests, slug burger-themed merchandise, and the general conviction that a Depression-era burger made from beef and soy is worth celebrating. Corinth is correct. In 1935, the Mayflower Cafe opened on Capitol Street in Jackson, Mississippi. The Greek immigrant family that ran it, the Proposes, developed a house dressing for their salads and as a dipping sauce for fried shrimp. They called it comeback sauce. Comeback sauce is a Mississippi-specific condiment. Mayonnaise, ketchup, chili sauce, Worcestershire sauce, garlic, onion, lemon juice, and black pepper, combined into a creamy, tangy, slightly spicy sauce that is simultaneously familiar and entirely specific to Jackson. It is the sauce that Greek-American restaurant owners in Jackson put on everything, on salads, on fried seafood, on burgers, on sandwiches, and that the rest of Mississippi adopted from them. The name comeback has two explanations. The first, the sauce is so good you come back for more. The second, it was the answer a Greek restaurant owner gave when a customer asked what was on the salad. What is this? Come back tomorrow, I'll tell you. Both stories are probably true. Neither can be verified. The sauce is verifiable. It is in every Jackson restaurant that serves Mississippi food and in the refrigerators of most Jackson households. The Mississippi River, at its widest and murkiest in the Delta, runs brown with silt, the color of dark chocolate, the texture of the thick clay soil that lines its banks. The Mississippi mud pie was named for both. A Mississippi mud pie is a brownie-like chocolate cake, dense, fudgy, intensely chocolatey, topped with marshmallows that are melted into the top of the cake as it comes out of the oven, then covered with a chocolate fudge frosting that sets into a crackled, slightly rough surface that resembles the cracked mud of a drying riverbank. Some versions add pecans. Some add chocolate chips. All versions are excessive in their chocolate content, which is correct. The origin of the name is Mississippi. The origin of the recipe is less specific. Similar recipes appear across the American South in the mid-20th century, when the combination of chocolate cake, marshmallows, and fudge frosting became popular at church suppers and potlucks. Mississippi claimed the name and the dessert with equal force, and the Mississippi mud pie has been on menus across the state and the country ever since. This one is the Delta food that food writers encounter and cannot stop writing about. A coulicle, the name is a portmanteau of Kool-Aid and pickle, is a dill pickle that has been marinated in a solution of Kool-Aid powder, sugar, and water until the brine inside the pickle is replaced by the sweet, artificially flavored Kool-Aid solution. The result is a pickle that is simultaneously sour, sweet, artificially flavored, and bright red or purple or whatever color the Kool-Aid was. It is eaten cold, from the jar, as a snack. The coulicle emerged in the Mississippi Delta in the early 2000s, sold from convenience store jars and roadside stands. It became a viral food moment when national food writers discovered it. The New York Times wrote about it. Food television covered it. The internet argued about it. The argument was always from outside Mississippi. Inside Mississippi, people were eating coulicles without needing anyone's opinion on the matter. The coulicle is the Delta's answer to the question of what happens when a food culture is creative with limited resources. A jar of dill pickles and a packet of Kool-Aid are both cheap and available. The sweet potato pie of Mississippi and the broader American South is not the pumpkin pie of the Northeast. They are not the same food. They do not belong to the same tradition. Mississippi people are clear on this. A Mississippi sweet potato pie is made from roasted or boiled sweet potatoes. The Mississippi sweet potato, grown in the black clay soil of the state, is among the most flavorful in the country, mashed with butter, sugar, eggs, evaporated milk, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg, baked in a pie shell until set. The filling is smooth and dense and deeply sweet, with a flavor that is more complex than pumpkin, earthier, slightly richer, with the specific sweetness of a well-grown Mississippi sweet potato. Sweet potato cultivation in Mississippi has deep roots in the food traditions of the enslaved African American community. West African agricultural knowledge included sweet potato cultivation, and the sweet potato became a staple of the African American diet in the South. Cheap, calorie-dense, available, and adaptable to dozens of preparations. The pie is the most celebrated of those preparations. Every church supper in Mississippi has a sweet potato pie. Every holiday table. Mississippi barbecue does not have the national profile of Texas brisket or Kansas City ribs or Carolina pulled pork. Mississippi barbecue is its own tradition, whole hog, slow-cooked over hickory coals, served with a thin vinegar-forward sauce that the state has been practicing since before the Civil War without asking for national recognition. The whole hog tradition of Mississippi, related to the whole hog barbecue of eastern North Carolina but distinct in its spicing and serving, runs through the delta and into the hill country. The pig is split and laid flat on a pit over hickory coals and cooked for 12 to 24 hours. The fat renders. The skin crisps. The meat falls from the bone. A pit master with a mop baste works through the night. The Mississippi barbecue circuit, the church fundraisers, the political rallies, the roadside pits that open on weekends and close when the pig is gone, is one of the most specific and least documented barbecue traditions in the country. The pitmasters who run it are often not restaurateurs. They are community members who cook because their community needs to eat. The barbecue is the gathering. The gathering is the community. Abe's Bar-B-Q in Clarksdale, opened since 1924 at the crossroads of Highway 49 and 61, the same crossroads where Robert Johnson's deal with the devil was said to have been made, has been serving Mississippi barbecue for over 100 years. The pork rind tradition of Mississippi, fried pork skin, sold in bags at every convenience store and roadside market in the state, is specific and serious in a way that the nationally distributed Frito-Lay version is not. Mississippi pork rinds made by small producers, particularly in the Delta, where the hog processing tradition is old and the rendering technique is specific, are thicker than national brand rinds, with more rendered fat clinging to the skin, producing a chew that is simultaneously crispy on the outside and slightly fatty within. They are seasoned with salt and cayenne, and sometimes with vinegar. The tradition of making cracklins and pork rinds in Mississippi traces to the same hog butchering culture that produced the boudin of Louisiana and the scrapple of Pennsylvania. The whole animal philosophy that wastes nothing and finds a use for every part. Mississippi is a state that has fed a nation and received less credit for it than any other. The tamale that arrived with Mexican migrant workers in the cotton fields became a Delta tradition that Robert Johnson sang about, and that 50 roadside stands still serve. The catfish that indigenous peoples fished from the river for thousands of years became a farm-raised industry that feeds the country. The burger that Corinth made from beef and soy because a nickel was all anyone had is still being eaten at the same restaurant that has been open since 1865. The pickle that the Delta turned bright red with Kool-Aid made national food writers fly in and write about it and miss the point. The point was never the novelty. The point was the creativity of people feeding themselves with what they had. Mississippi does not have a famous restaurant district. It does not have a celebrity chef who put it on the national map. It has a 350-mile tamale trail through the Delta, a crossroads where the blues and the barbecue have both been running since 1924, and a pickle that confused the entire country. Not every state has a food that arrived from Mexico, was adopted by the African American community, and became a tradition nobody can fully explain. Not every state's most famous musician sang about a street food. Not every state makes its pickles with Kool-Aid and stands behind the decision completely. Mississippi does things its own way. Has since the first tamale vendor set up at a cotton field crossroads and the workers stopped to eat.